Paul, it's a focus on you again this week, mate. What I thought would be interesting to discuss is, we have so many people ask us about Redmen and its beginnings and stuff, and I want to certainly discuss that in depth and detail, but also where it is now compared to what you thought it might be, and then where you see yourself probably in the next 5 to 10 years and stuff. So why Redmen? Why YouTube? What made you get into that?
So basically, we talked about the week about how I moved back to Liverpool in 2005, and I had this burning desire to just start filming stuff and start making stuff. I thought I was going to fail my degree, and so I got a job, and then I never failed my degree. So I got my degree, and then I started doing this job, and then I kind of thought, you had that thing of like, I should probably be doing something with this. So that's when I moved back, and as I'd said at the time, I tried to get a loan to buy a camera, and I totally fucked my finances up, so couldn't. So then I was kind of back to square one of having to work and do stuff. And meanwhile, I've always kept notebooks and always just scribbled ideas down on a variety of random things. And it was that thing of, I just needed to start turning that from being sat in the back of one of our friends' bedrooms in a cloud of smoke to turning something from writing loads of ideas down to actually making a step to making things a reality. So it was around that time just starting to make little videos and little clips and doing little bits and pieces. And for me, it's always been about taking stuff from here and making it a reality. So it was a quest really to find a couple of things. It was to find something that was good enough that could be done over and over again. It was about making a job, trying to find something that people would be interested in. At the time, there's no, like, YouTube was there, but no one really knew what YouTube was.
Not cat videos and shit, was it?
Yeah, exactly. It was like YouTube was what Facebook is now. Is that you'd see videos would permeate into your life, but you never really thought about who uploaded them or where they came from. So we never really thought about YouTubers or YouTube channels or whatever. It was just a sort of place to host random videos, which is what I initially kind of used it for. And it was just about it was about trying to get on telly. It was about trying to make. So it was like I'd send scripts off to the film council to try and get funding for short films, and we made a couple of shorts to enter into short film competitions. And blah blah blah, and some of your earliest cameos are in all those things, because it was just
we're gonna put a couple of clips.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely legs. I think in a one day we'll do a proper reacts to the really early stuff because it's horrendous. But it was just keeping myself ticking up because I was miserable. I was just absolutely down in the dumps because it's really hard to explain, and it sounds a bit conceited, but it's like, you feel like you're something you should be doing with your life, and when you're not doing it, you just feel really empty. You feel like you're fighting against the grain. You feel like you're walking uphill when you're doing the simplest of things in life. So it was like we tried so many different things. There was tons and tons of different ideas. I was like trying to make money by making music videos. Or doing adverts for people, just doing little videos here and there. And Redmen was just the one that kind of
stuck.
Yeah, it felt like it had the most legs. We used to sit around the pub, didn't we? We think about that, like 2007 was probably around the real genesis of it, because we used to go out, we just used to meet in the 80s on Allerton Road to watch the Champions League games, and we'd sit off and we'd drink beforehand, and then we'd drink afterwards, and that was kind of like that we developed the culture.
Uncensored match build-up show, watch the game, final word show straight after. Yeah. It's what everyone does in pubs.
Exactly, and that was it. And it was a bit of like, kind of feeling like there might be something to that. And because LFC TV was free at the time, so it used to be on Sky, so it was and I used to joke that it was like the socially acceptable version of Babe Station, was those channels that as a fella, when there was no one else in the room, you'd put on. There's a reason most people's number 9 buttons worn out on the Sky remotes. But then when you were done with that, you'd put LFC TV on and you'd maybe watch Goal Rush. And it was just...
Goal Rush was good.
Yeah, but it was like one presenter, down the lens, very dry, very, very, very boring stuff, and just thinking, wonder if there's something we can make there that would make that a little bit better, basically.
So what happened then from the genesis of the idea to putting the show up, and where was it supposed to sit if YouTube wasn't the place?
So it was pitched to LFC TV originally. So I remember desperately trying to track an email down, a bit of an email chain, like, I've got this thing, I want to speak to someone about something, who can I get in touch with? And I eventually got past the email of a guy called Paul Rogers, who was the head of content at LFC TV at the time, when they were based in the Matchworks and Speak. So it was me, our mate Jerome from school, who was like, he had the experience, so he'd worked for ITV and BBC, and he had a really good camera, and he was the professional in the outfit. We were just the rank amateurs.
Morons.
Yeah, absolutely. With nothing but dreams and smiley faces, like, and so me and him managed to get our foot in the door, went and got a meeting with them, and I had done this treatment document for the show, what it was going to look like, what segments were going to be, how it was going to be promoted, why LFC TV wasn't working, how to engage better with fans, all this kind of stuff. And we took it in and we pitched it to them, and they were made up, and I was like, what? And they were saying things like, well, we haven't got money, but we can sort you out with guests. We can help you out with things like tapes to record on. Do it all on my phone now. And we walked away absolutely buzzing with it. And then I left them this folder, which is like one of the biggest mistakes in my life, because they started cancelling meetings on us, and then all of a sudden, over the next year, 18 months, those ideas started to be drip fed into things that they were doing, which was heartbreaking. Like, but we made the pilot. Yeah. We'd done a few things, and we tried a few things. Like, we painted the banner, the original Redmen banner, in like 2007, 2008, I think. And we went to town and we did some Vox Pops, which we got about 2, and it was the most soul-crushing thing ever.
Horrible. That Vox Box is the worst thing you can do with a microphone and a camera. Yeah,
it's horrendous. We think it's easier than it is now, because all we have to do is stand outside Anfield and people kind of flock over and want to talk to you, whereas to do it cold in the street is horrible. University students, it puts so many students off doing it, because that's what they get asked to do for modules on the course. God knows I've done it myself. But we did that, and we got to the point where we were just trying to get that second meeting, just to try to firm things up. And I was taking days off work at the time. I used up all my holiday days on cancelled meetings, and I was fucking fuming by this point. So we went and filmed the pilot in like the summer of 2009.
It's a battle. It's a good one. It's a battle. Yeah? Really? It's the crossbar battle.
The crossbar battle. Go for it.
Outstanding.
And cut it all together, and there was a guy who's Jerome's mate, Darren Brady, who did a lot of the editing for it, did the graphics
and stuff,
yeah, he did a brilliant job on the graphics. But both of those lads did the editing, and one that I think it was Jerome went down the rabbit hole one night on it and started, I think it was him, it might have been that, started cut a laughter track to it. And it's the worst. And like, you'll never see this on YouTube. It's not on YouTube anywhere, because I refused to put it out on YouTube eventually. But it was fucking horrendous, and it nearly ruined the whole thing. But we finally just said to them, "Look, we've got this pilot. Can we just have half an hour to show it to you?" So we finally got back in and we showed it to them, and they killed themselves laughing. I don't think you were there with us for that. They killed themselves laughing over it, and then we sat down afterwards, and it was this Paul Rogers fella again, and he goes, that was really funny, that really good. And one of the producers was like, oh yeah, great. And then he goes, did that joke need to be that long? Does it need 2 presenters? And bear in mind, all LFC TV's content was 1 presenter at the time, and I was like, they just wanted to make it then. And they said, well, we spoke to our advertising agency, and they said, to be honest, people are either going to love it or hate it. I was like, yep, that's what happens with things. You know what I mean? People will have a lot of it. And basically what they were alluding to is they can't take the risk on it. And then they said, well, maybe we'll have like a public competition where people can submit their own ideas, and the winner will get to be on it. And I was like, like, so I spent like 6 months trying to get a toe in the door. Got me toe in the door, got it slammed on it, and then I was basically holding the door open for all people to come in. And the problem is that we've never been connected in the Liverpool scene. We never grew up in it. We didn't know people in it. We just lads who knew each other and went the game. So if it was going to boil down to like a popularity contest, there was just, someone was probably going to come along who knew all the lads from, like, I mean, Spirit of Shankly was probably very early days around there, but maybe knew them and would be able to create a groundswell. So I was fucking raging. So,
but we did have one of those guys come into our lives at one point, didn't we, Paul?
Yeah. So
Ray Osborne.
So Ray Osborne, it was because that was kind of what kicked us off, because we came full circle around that. So we sat on that pilot for like, that was like summer 2009, and then I had an operation on my shoulder around the Christmas, so I was off work for 3 months, and I was like, going back to the drawing board of what videos to make, what to do, and this was sat there the whole time, like just gathering dust, and I was like, okay, well, we'll try and make something of it. So when it got round to summer of 2010, I was like, right, we're going to put it out, we're going to try it, see if people like it, and then we'll start making new stuff. And we put the first few clips out, and this fella Ray Osborne got into it, and he was part of Help Save LFC, which was, people don't really remember now, but was a kind of an analogue to Spirit of Shankly. They were a bit more in your face, a bit more physical protests and that. Like, I think they maybe worked in conjunction or whatever, yeah. But they did the Standards Cut Up the black protest shirts and what have you. And Ray was our biggest advocate initially. And he really went to bat for it. Now, he also set us up for our biggest, earliest test, because there was a video we did taking the piss out of Everton's pink kit.
Absolutely brilliant. How uncomfortable does he look there?
And he told his lad posted all over Everton forums, so we got fucking slaughtered, weeks and weeks of getting annihilated, when I was like turning comments off on YouTube, because I was like, this is not what I got into it for. I just wanted to make some fun videos so Liverpool fans. Didn't occur to me that like Evertonians might
have
just
YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but Ray was the one who got us in, and he helped us with the, we started covering a lot of the protest stuff around that, and yeah, him and a few of the guys around that time were like really, because we were a bit daft, and we always done our things our own way. We never taken things too seriously, but also no one was giving coverage to this. Like, there was no BBC weren't turning up to cover this stuff, and ITV and whatever. Yeah, so we did. And as a result, we kind of, we gave these guys a platform to talk and stuff. And so, yeah, that was our first real point of legitimacy, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Ray was a massive influence, I think, for both of us, wasn't he? I think, when probably at the point where you're thinking, is this going to work and all that type of stuff, this guy who is Liverpool through and through, who's, anybody who's been on Rourke, a massive forum, if you're not a Liverpool fan, will know him as Shankly Boy, and he started the old arse thread on there and stuff, and that thread, I believe, still lives on to this day. And he was, he was a huge post on there before he passed, unfortunately. And I don't think Redmen would be here without his input, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah, it was him, and there's a couple of guys. Roy Henderson was big at the time as well, of being a big supporter of us, and you're right, it helped because you had fellas who were properly established in the Liverpool scene, almost giving us the mark of approval or whatever. And yeah, he'd constantly fight to get us into rooms. So we did it when they did the Dear Mr. Hicks stuff. They were the guys who put us forward to get involved with Mike Jeffries, who was the director of that. Really helped get us in the room. And Ray passed away not too long afterwards. Well, it was swine flu or bird flu, like a real out of the blue shock, and I was absolutely heartbroken. And because, and it's one of those things, we have it more and more the older you get, particularly with Facebook, and people who've passed who are still on your Facebook, and they still crop up and you still
your
see them.
Birthdays and comments from people talking to them on their birthdays and stuff, which is a weird thing.
Yeah, and he was like you say, a mega influence on me at the time, because it was just a fella I totally respected, and weirdly, just like he could have thought we were massive bellends, like, and he never did. And lots of people did at the time, because it's very difficult with the Liverpool scene to break into things. We love Scousers. We don't like new things. We don't like people who think that who we think are bigger than they are. Not that we ever have, but there's a culture of, if you want to film yourself, then maybe you presume you think you're better, or your opinion matters or whatever, which has obviously never been the case.
Let's talk a little bit more about early Redmen and stuff, and how it was, because people will have seen some of the early videos, but it isn't what it was, is it, Redmen?
No, it's funny because there's a load of graphics that come up on my Facebook on this day, and you're going back a decade now, and it was originally pitched as like the LFC comedy show, effectively. It was more of an entertainment show. It was just talking a little bit about what was happening in footy, but it was largely just having a laugh and doing some sketches and taking the mick out of things that were happening in and around footy in general, but with a Liverpool slant to it. And that, the evolution of that is funny because that was all us taking the piss and, dressing up as footballers and having a laugh or doing challenges and that kind of stuff was what, again, making an entertainment show was what it was, and it's moved more and more away from that as it's become a bit more grown up, a bit more mature, a bit more polished as the years have gone on. But yeah, it's night and day. God, those early ones are genuinely atrocious.
They were scripted, weren't they?
Some of the scripting, I like some of the scripting on it because it tells you what we were trying to do. It was like when you're trying to do comedy, you've got to script. So a lot of it was like reacting to the World Cup stuff and that, and so again, the problem with comedy is it's very subjective and it's very hit and miss. It was definitely more missed than hit.
I think one of the other issues is when you've got scripting, you need people who can act.
Yeah.
And I certainly can't fucking act.
We had some good fun, but we found our groove that we realised eventually the easiest thing to do is just press record on the camera and just talk about footy. And once we realised that, then it was it. But it very much it was a very different beast back then.
Do you miss that fun stuff, Paul?
Yeah, 100%, because I'm always considered myself like a writer-director. I never really wanted to be a presenter. I never really wanted to be in front of camera per se. It was the problem you've got. I always talk about this, like if you're a musician, if you're a guitarist, you can take your guitar out and you can go and play, and maybe you can, if you want to sing a bit, you can do, but you don't have to. You can just go and play your guitar. When you're a writer, you've written this script, great. Well, where's that going to go? If you want someone to make it, you've got to convince someone to pay for it. You've got to convince someone to direct it. You've got to convince camera ops, and you've got to convince a production company to take it on for you. And I got so frustrated with that I ended up on doing as many of the roles as I humanly could. But that was always it for me. I loved, we worked in the tavern. I used to spend hours upon hours of my day in my own head, or having light conversations with people. Whatever. I had a notebook with me and I'd just be scribbling sketches and stuff down. So I loved that side of things. I've always preferred the art of it, the craft of it. There's no craft to what we do anymore. It's established. We've established the rules around which Redmen is constructed largely. So like now it's just you turn up, you press go, you do a bit of mixing, you edit it, you chop it up, it goes out. Those days of like being able to go to dream stuff, and that's why we reference it on here all the time. The Champ Man series was probably the last time we really, really did something that was like that.
I'm not sure what's going to be happening. I'm sure the lads have got something going on, so I'll be joining in that.
Maybe the things where we did like the Mo Salah goals, recreated stuff last summer.
Mo Salah can pick up the pieces and score. It's a goal for Liverpool. It's another goal for Mo Salah.
Those when you go, right, here's an idea. How do we go about constructing it? Yeah,
this is what I want it to look like.
Yeah, I do very much miss that stuff.
So where do you see yourself going over the next 5 years?
It's a really interesting one because honestly, no idea. Because it's been a 10-year battle to get Redmen to establish itself and to be a self-sustaining entity, for a battle for legitimacy, a battle for for quality, and now we're entering a world where there's other people kind of doing similar things, and now it's a bit of a battle to remain on top. I've always had there's always other things I wanted to try, always other subject matters I wanted to get into, but at this point now I'm not sure where the next step comes. I've got plenty of ideas, plenty of things I'd like to try, but the hardest situation we're in now, and this is not, I say hard, this is a situation I would have begged to have been in any point up to like this point in my life, is that it's hard to now choose what your next step is going to be, because when you've kind of made a success of something, you've got a bit of freedom to do what you want to do, but you're not so free as you can pour 100% of your time into it. So to get, you know, Redmen has been an act of absolute fucking lunacy for the last 10 years. It's been a obscene amount of dedication and time and effort and blood and sweat and tears, lots and lots of tears that have gone into making it. It's hard to then go back and start a new thing. It's hard to decide what's the next best thing.
We had a comment, I think it was on maybe the first or the second podcast, and I forget whose name it was, and apologies, but I think the comment was, the general gist of it, and this isn't verbatim by any stretch of the imagination, was, why are you two doing this? You've got Redmen. There'll be a point in the future where you have to pick, and you'll pick this, as in MXP, rather than Redmen and stuff. And, you know, I mean, personally, I think personally, I need this. I need something that's not just Redmen TV in my life. I don't know whether you feel the same way, and you know, whether, you know, it's been 10 years of doing the same thing, and listen, it's changed year on year, but ultimately we're still talking about football, aren't we?
Whenever I see like The Who or Metallica or like the Rollins, you get to the really older bands and all that, and they're going out and they're gigging, and you realise that, like, a great example of like Paul McCartney a few months back, and he's not arsed now, so he's putting his new songs in with the classics and all that, but people aren't vibing with the new stuff as much as, of course, they're going to vibe with stuff they've had in their lives the whole time. But I get a little bit of that, is that you see, and you wonder, like, you compare it to musicians of like, what do you do when you reach a point? It becomes side projects, but how often do side projects become as good as you know, are the Last Shadow Puppets ever going to be as big as the Arctic Monkeys?
Does it matter?
No, but
to them,
probably not. But it depends. It depends, because I don't know. Because it depends what they get out of it. Because if Alex Turner gets bored of the Arctic Monkeys, you're not going to cut your nose off to spite your face. You're not going to, you know, if maybe like Paul McCartney can do what he wants because he's got more money than he'll ever need in 10 lifetimes. So he can just do whatever the hell he wants. But if you're not making, if you know, you need to reach a point where you've made enough money that you can be comfortable and be able to do the things, because that's the tough issue. Is you need to be able to be, you need jobs. Because here's the thing, this is a weird thing to say, because this will fall on deaf ears to most people, and fair play, because most people do jobs that they hate because they think, because you're supposed to hate your work, and you're supposed to hate your life, and you're supposed to hate your wife, and you're supposed to hate all these things. I disagree. I think you're meant to love your job, and I think you're meant to love your wife, and I think you're meant to love your kids, and you're meant to love all these things. So you should be striving to be happier in what you do, and that's a very difficult thing to marry, because when you look at what you're doing, you should be made up, and I am, but I'm also the kind of person who likes to constantly move forward. I get very bored doing the same thing. Monotony is my biggest bugbear, so I need to feel like a bitch, like a shark. I need to constantly be moving forward. It's quite a draining way to live life. I'm my own worst critic, but I always feel like I need to be trying stuff and moving stuff. So I'm in a very weird crossroads of things. I'm really enjoying doing this because it's nice to have different forms of conversation. But you look at Redmen, it's hard particularly because there's like no payoff. It's like watching a porn video with no cum shot. That's what Liverpool, it's kind of been like with Redmen. I've loved every second of it. It's been built up. It's got me where I am today. But we haven't had that big blowout at the end that you can go, oh, I was there for that. We did that. So it does become a little bit of like how do you refresh that? How do you maintain your interest when you're basically playing, you're playing Smells Like Teen Spirit after fucking 10 years?
You could look at Redmen and let's say we're doing the same stuff next season as we've done this season. Are we improving any? Is Redmen getting better? How are we going to do that? You need to constantly move forwards, but you also need to move forwards with different things in your life. Mm-hmm. Like just the news topics that we're talking about today. We can't talk about Brazil. We could maybe talk about Brazil's World Cup stadiums. Can't talk about Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. I mean, when did we get time to do that? We're in here like fucking 50 odd 60 hours a week, you know what I mean? It's mad, isn't it? I think I personally need this time to myself, and I think you're probably in exactly the same
I just want to,
boat.
and there's also there's loads of things going on. The reason why I ultimately got in front of the camera for Redmen was because I wanted to build something. Was because I was writing these scripts and sending them off, and I was fucking nobody. And so no one's got the time of day for these things. No one's going to overlook grammatical errors. It's like when you get sent a random CV. So much stuff just going in the bin. And I was watching people who had just a bit of fame and a bit of notoriety were walking into doors that were getting slammed in my face. And these people had not done, no more talented than me, no more charismatic than me, no more anything. They had nothing going for them other than they'd made it a little bit earlier in life, and so they had a little bit of a reputation that was opening doors for them. And that's what I wanted to, was get to a point where it would open doors for me. So that's what I hope I'll reach in the next 5 years, is that I can start to channel some of this, and we're doing it with this, and with my own channel and what have you, is hopefully is just know more people, be able to meet more people, be able to expand the horizons a little bit, because 10 years ago I was working part-time for you, shoveling shit out of a fucking cellar and all this kind of stuff, and living on buttons a week and having having holes in my roof and all this kind of stuff, like, to make this all possible. But hopefully this is just that lull, that eye of the storm before it all kicks off over
it's
the
the
other
plateau
side.
before the next stage and stuff. And listen, a lot of people won't know this, and probably the people who work with us don't know any of this stuff, but we made a pact years and years ago, didn't we, like when we were growing up, that if one of us made it, we'd take the other person with us. Obviously we discussed a couple of weeks ago how you were without a job, and I then gave you that job and that platform to get back on your feet, and equally you got me involved in Redmen, have taken me on this journey ever since. So I feel like we made a pact 15 years ago. We've done it pretty good so far. Like, there was other people that we've lost involved in that pact as well along the way, unfortunately.
No, but it's true. But I always said about that, and that galled me, because again, it's like kind of like the stuff I was talking about when I was losing my job a couple of weeks ago, is that you take it as a personal affront when people don't want to follow you on the journey, but you kind of come to realise people have got their own paths. And I always use the line of, like, the hen that made the bread, is the old parable about how the hen asks for people for help in making the bread, and then ultimately everyone wants a share of it when it's made, but it's the people who want to help you along the way are the people that you want to help in return. And we've tried our best to do that. That's how we've kind of constructed the business that we've done. The people who've come in here and worked the bollocks off, we've always tried to help and sort out, and hopefully down the line hopefully we've made loads of, like, really talented people on the line who will drag us up further in years to come. But no, it's been an amazing ride anyway.